If he had just passed his physical, the Giants would still owe Carlos Correa nearly $300 million over the next 11 years. Here's why I think I would definitely take the Willy Adames contract over that right now.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show for almost 6 full years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. And coming up on today's show, we're going to get into this Carlos Correa versus Willy Adames contract thing, and then we're going to get to some more mailbag questions. And tomorrow is going to be our conversation with Millard from Locked On D-backs. We weren't able to align on the time. Those of you who were expecting that today, I fell asleep and I slept through our scheduled meeting. Oops, he's probably going to give me some heat for that, but more reason to tune in to listen tomorrow. Anyway, so I just was doing what I always do, which was looking at baseball stuff online. And one of the things that I noticed in this, projection season has kind of come and gone. Like when 2025 projections came out, I noticed, obviously what the projections were for Willy Adames and how Dan Szymborski, the creator of the Zips projection system, basically said that the Giants' contract for Adames, 7 years, $182 million, was right in line with what Zips projected his contract should be. Basically, it's a fair market value deal. And it got me looking at and thinking about Carlos Correa along the way and how the Giants would never have signed Adames if Correa simply had passed his physical back after the 2022 season. And so I feel like people get this wrong a lot. It was a 13-year, $350 million contract. So I'm not here to say, oh, that sounds horrible, because I was very excited at the time and very, it was crazy when the physical was failed on the day of the introductory press conference. That was an awful time to be a Giants fan, but I'm looking at it from starting right now, and we'll address the fact of what this misses. This misses the fact that he would have been on the team the last 2 years. He could have perhaps led them to making the playoffs one or both of the last 2 years. And I'm also going to kind of pretend that he didn't end up having an injury or like a medical issue that was flagged. Let's just imagine he was healthy enough to pass his physical and that he was on the Giants right now, which was by far the most likely outcome. So this is not like some crazy scenario. So if that was the case, he would have spent the last 2 seasons on the Giants, and entering 2025, basically the contract that he would be signed to would be an 11-year, $296.2 million contract. And he is currently entering his age 30 season. And so the most valuable seasons, like part of why I was so excited about Carlos Correa was because of his age. And so the most valuable seasons were and are in the front of a contract like that, not at the back. And so given that just 2 years have passed, it's already flipped to the point where I would much rather have Willy Adames right now for 7 years, $182 million, than Carlos Correa for 11 years, $296.2 million. So just for the record, the average annual value is really similar. Adames is getting $26 million a year if you just divide 182 divided by 7, and Correa if you take 350 and divide it by 13, he was going to be making an average of $26.9 million a year. And so 900,000 more per year for Correa. It's not that different. But the difference is in the years. And so 7 more years for Adames versus 11 more years for Correa if that deal had gone through. And again, I'm not ignoring, I'm just choosing, that's not the point of the point I'm trying to make today, that you would have had Correa for the previous 2 years when he was 29 and 28, but now he's going into his age 30 season, Correa. And Adames is going into his age 29 season. So suddenly it's like a no-brainer that you would rather have Adames who's younger. It's just about when you hit free agency is huge. Like if Adames reached free agency at like 27, he would have gotten a much larger deal. That's just how it is, because those prime seasons are paid for at top dollar for really good players. But Adames is going to be 29 pretty much all year. He turns 30 in September 2nd. But the projections, I mean, what's striking is how incredibly similar the projections are. And by the way, Adames is signed through his age 35 season, so he'll turn 36 at the end of that season. The way we do age whatever season is like a June 1st or July 1st cutoff. I forget. I think it's July 1st. Maybe it's June 1st. Cutoff, what age you are on that day. And so for Correa, he would have been signed through his age 40 season. They're both born in September. So Correa would have been turning 41 at the end of that deal. Anyway, the projections are just remarkably similar, but there is a little bit of a caveat. So Carlos, let's do Adames and Correa, and we're going to go one by one through these projections that are featured on Fangraphs. There's a bunch. Fangraphs depth charts, which is just an average of these two projection systems, Steamer and Zips, and then they make a manual playing time adjustment because they're like, oh, we know this guy's going to get platooned or this guy's not an everyday player. So they make manual playing time adjustments. And given the manual playing time adjustments, they kind of knock Correa a little bit and project less playing time. They project 130 games for Correa and 156 for Adames out of 162. So that makes a difference, but the overall projection by Fangraphs depth charts is 4.1 wins above replacement for each player, exactly, on the nose. And so Steamer and Zips are obviously going to be similar too. Steamer says 3.8 for Adames and 3.9 for Correa. Zips says 4.2 for Adames and 4.1 for Correa. Moving on to other systems that are like independent of these other ones, and Steamer and Zips are independent too. Fangraphs just happens to use those two to make their official Fangraphs projection. ATC is another projection system. It says 3.6 wins above replacement for Adames, 3.5 for Correa. The Bat, another projection system, 3.8 for Adames, 3.6 for Correa. The Bat X is an alternate or like a advanced version of the Bat that uses more like StatCast data. 3.5 for Adames, 3.2 for Correa. And then this last one is a new one this year called Oopsie. And it says 4.5 wins above replacement for Adames and 4.3 for Correa. And so the only one that has Correa ahead of Adames is Steamer, and that's by 0.1 win above replacement. And so remarkably similar. Like they're all within 0.2. It's either 0.1 or 0.2 for all of them in terms of how they're projected. But some of that is playing time. So essentially, Correa projected to be a better player, but to play less. And so you have to take that into account. Like someone would play those games, but if you assume like replacement level production, then it doesn't add any wins above replacement. So, that's what replacement level means. It's like the average player who's like replacing guys like Correa and Adames. So anyway, just thought that was interesting, and just a huge discrepancy and disparity between what those contracts are moving forward. And suddenly Adames is the younger player, and he signed for far fewer years for a little bit less per year. And it just looks like the much better contract just 2 years later. And so I just thought that was interesting. So coming up in just a minute, we're going to turn our attention to some mailbag questions, including fans weighing in on their expectations and how there's a lot of different opinions out there. And I'll give my feedback. We'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, excuse me. I was going to say something else, but thanks again. Welcome back. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow we will be talking with Millard from Locked On D-backs. I won't fall asleep this time. Whoops. So my bad, Millard, but we're going to have that conversation tomorrow. For the everydayers, check us out. We'll be back. We're with you Monday through Friday until December when we go to 3 days a week. So, yeah, I'm excited. The season starts 3 weeks from today, by the way. Very excited. We're closer to the season, to opening day in Cincinnati than we are to when pitchers and catchers reported, which to me feels like it just happened. So, before you know it, opening day is going to be here. So, getting to some questions, we had a ton. Thank you to those who submitted questions on Twitter, Blue Sky, and YouTube. And this one comes from Niners Giants, username @KevinR. He says, this is a much superior team than the 2024 team. Significant improvements at many positions. And Snell in the first half last year was basically an automatic loss and killed the bullpen. Giants are being underrated by Vegas and national media. Agree? So I'm going to read the next two before I say agree or disagree. Next one comes from Alan, who says, it seems to me that signing Matt Chapman, Justin Verlander, and Willy Adames, along with Jung-Hoo Lee and Robbie Ray returning from injury, means the Giants have essentially added 3 exciting and great players and brought back 2 others. I see the Giants winning 8 to 10 more games than last year. What is your prediction for wins and losses this year? 89 wins in parentheses. And then Cameron has a very different take. Cameron says, why are the Giants so okay with being near the bottom of the NL West? So I'm gonna answer each one of these 3 questions because they're all a little bit different. So Kevin, Niners Giants, I think you're being a little bit rose-colored glasses, like in my opinion, like much superior team. Could be. I don't see necessarily significant improvements at many positions. They really made one significant improvement, and that was Willy Adames. You could argue that moving Fitzgerald to second base is an improvement at second base, but he was already playing. And then there are returning players, and then there's young players. But like Blake Snell also, yes, he was very bad in the beginning, but he was that good in the second half too. So we can't only say he was that bad in the beginning, but ignore that he was that good in the second half. And so the Giants are being underrated by Vegas and national media. I don't know exactly where Vegas has the Giants, but I'm assuming it's around 500, and I don't blame them. That's kind of where I would, like, this is a team, I think that they have, I've spoken to this a bunch, more upside than they've had in recent years. I also think last year they had pretty good projections, and they underperformed them rather solidly. And so that's something to keep in mind. And speaking of all those projection systems I just mentioned, comparing Correa and Adames, we can look at what are the win projections by those projection systems for the Giants. And like ATC has the Giants 81 and 81, basically. The Bat X has the Giants winning about 84 games. Oopsie, which I think is a silly name for the record, 81 and a half wins. Fangraphs WAR gives the Giants 80 or 79.5 wins. And then Fangraphs, I'm not sure quite what the difference is, says 80.5 wins. So like 80 to 84-ish is kind of where all these projection systems are landing. So those are median projections, meaning when it gives you a number like that, half of the time in their like million simulations that they run, half of the time they're better than that, and half of the time they're worse. And so there's 500,000 scenarios out there where the Giants outperform that number. And there's 500,000 scenarios where they underperform it based on just a ton of different possible permutations of things that could happen. So I don't know. I think it's fair to question them given that they just haven't done anything except in 2021 for the last many, many years. So basically they need to go out and prove it for me or the national media to give them the respect they may deserve, but they may not. And then in terms of adding 3 exciting and great players and brought back 2 others. So bringing back 2 others, I'm confused as to exactly who you mean by 2, because Robbie Ray and Jung-Hoo Lee were already here, as was Matt Chapman, right? And so they brought in Verlander and Adames, and I would not call Verlander great. I would call him old and great in his career, but I don't expect peak Justin Verlander. I think that would be a little foolish given his age. But look, if anybody could do it, it would be him. But the jury is very much still out, in my opinion, on what is going to happen with Justin Verlander. I'm glad they brought back Matt Chapman. I'm glad they signed Willy Adames, and I think Jung-Hoo Lee coming back is great. Robbie Ray has also been inconsistent in his career, and so I don't know what to expect out of him. I'm not banking on him being like Cy Young Robbie Ray, but if he can just be healthy and be good-ish, then that would be a win. But to predict 89 wins, I'm not going that far. I mean, what is my prediction? That's the thing. It's so hard to make a prediction in baseball, but I have no idea. This team in particular, I have no, like, I'm going to say no fewer than 76 wins and no more than 90. Like, that would probably be somewhere between 76 and 90 wins, like anywhere in there, and it wouldn't shock me. So what is the middle of those? It would be like in the low to mid 80s, I guess. And so that's probably where I would land if I had to guess right now. And that's with me being a Giants fan, which is going to naturally bias me a little bit as well, which is something I'm aware of. So lastly, Cameron says, why are the Giants so okay with being near the bottom of the NL West? Very different fan perspective here. And I just have to say, like, those of you who listen to this show regularly, even if you don't, you maybe have heard me say this because I say it so often. I don't really care about where they rank in the division. I care about where they rank in the National League, because that's how playoffs are determined. It's not about, you could finish in 4th place and make the playoffs. You could finish in 2nd place in a division and miss the playoffs. So it doesn't matter at all to me where they finish. Well, you know, it would mean something. Like if you told me they're going to finish in 4th, that would very likely mean they're not making the playoffs, because I think that one of the Diamondbacks and Padres is very likely, one if not both of those teams is likely to make the playoffs. But you do have good teams in the NL East too, with the Phillies, Braves, and Mets. And so assume, you know, one of those teams will win the division in the East, and then two of the others will probably make the playoffs. That would leave one spot. And so that's a problem, because one non-division winning spot. So assume the Dodgers win the West, then you got to finish in 2nd to make the playoffs if the Phillies, Braves, and Mets all have really good seasons, essentially. And so, yeah, it's kind of an uphill climb. But my point is, the Giants finished in 4th last year, but they finished 19 games ahead of the Rockies. They were closer to the Dodgers than they were to the Rockies, even though they finished in fourth. Think about that. They were fourth place and closer to first place than they were to fifth place. They were 18 games out of first. It's still a lot, but they were 19 games out of last. So I think that argument is it's just a little bit misleading. And yeah, this year or last year, they did finish 9 games out of third place, which is not good. But the year before that, it's not like the Diamondbacks ran away or the Padres. The Padres finished 3 games ahead of the Giants for third place. And the Giants, by the way, finished 20 games ahead of the Rockies for last place. So we're talking 19 and 20 games out of last. And 2 years ago, 3 games out of third and 5 games out of second place and 21 games out of first place. Diamondbacks finished in second place, 16 games behind the Dodgers, and went to the World Series. And they beat the Dodgers, swept them in the first round, despite the Dodgers winning 100 games and the Diamondbacks winning 84. So this is what I'm talking about, and this is why I don't. But you make a fair point. Like, if the point is just why are the Giants not like just going all in all the time? Because they don't have an ownership group that is content with losing money. They want to break even, according to themselves. They've said it multiple times. And I do believe that that's true. And Buster Posey, I think, echoes that. And I wouldn't take Buster Posey for a liar. And there's a lot of expenses that go into running a team, and you're going to get these like Forbes articles that come out saying what their profits were and all that, but this is not public information. And so we actually don't know what their profits or losses are. It's not public. And so that's going to come out probably soon. It comes out every year. People lose their minds. And then I'm always saying, where are they getting this information? And they act as if it's factual, but it's not public information. So it's like speculation. And I don't really understand it to this day. So anyway, why are they so content to finish near the bottom? I don't really see it that way. I think they're much closer to second place than they are to last, certainly. Like, they're even closer to first place consistently than they are to last. Or at least it's close. Like, they're as close to first place as they are to last. So it's really a race for like second, third, and fourth in the National League West with the Dodgers. And by the way, all these projection systems, a lot of them, the ones we just mentioned, have the Giants finishing ahead of the Padres, or at least like neck and neck. And they think the Diamondbacks are just a 4 to 5 win better team than the Giants and Padres. But, and that's the thing is, like I said, in half the time, there's a scenario where with these projections, they're median projections. So say the Padres and Diamondbacks each finish below their median projection and the Giants finish above, easily could happen, and then you finish ahead of them. So it happens all the time. This is just a kind of shot in the dark. And by the way, what is the one I'm looking at right now? The Bat X, which uses like advanced data in its model, has the Giants finishing in second, and the Diamondbacks in third, and the Padres in fourth, and the Rockies a distant fifth. The Giants a distant second behind the Dodgers. But, I think it's close. It's just a melee between those three, with the Giants, not being like the favorites for second place, but could easily be second or third place. So that's how I see it. Anyway, coming up in just a minute, more questions and answers, including questions about Carson, Whisenhunt, and Bryce, Eldridge, questions that the team answered with its actions in the last few days. So we'll get into that in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Wonderful Pistachios. I absolutely love Wonderful Pistachios. I have some right here with me. Are you looking for an exciting a snack that's both delicious and nutritious. I get excited about them. Crack into a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. I literally have them right here. I picked them up when I was looking at a car. Well, not for me, but at a car dealership. I picked these up and I can't get enough of them. So Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to keep you feeling fuller longer. I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk or I'm on a road trip or I just need a quick protein boost. They're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, here we go. More questions and answers. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers tomorrow, yes, we'll be talking with Millard from Locked On D-backs. If I fall asleep again, I swear I won't wear it down from Millard or from even myself. So anyway, unusual, but it happened. And so let's just continue with the questions. The first one here coming from Craig, who says, why does Eldridge strike out so much? We're talking Bryce Eldridge, Giants' top prospect, one of the top prospects in baseball. Fun fact about Bryce Eldridge is that this 6'7" giant of a human is 20 years old. 20 years old. Doesn't turn 21 until October 20th. And he's playing in Major League Spring Training. He made it to AAA last year as a 19-year-old. What were you and I doing at age 19 or 20? Certainly not facing major league caliber pitching. And so, yeah, Eldridge struck out in exactly 2/3 of his 12 plate appearances. So 9 times in, wait, not 9. Why can't you can't do math when you're talking. It just doesn't work out. 8 times in 12 plate appearances. So it's 12 plate appearances. That's why. I mean, also, like, he didn't strike out that much in the minors. So minor league performance over 519 plate appearances is way more relevant than 12 plate appearances in Major League Spring Training. I get it. He's not always facing the best pitching because it's spring training and it's whatever, but like, pitchers are ahead of hitters. That's what they show up earlier. And yeah, the hitters are working all off season, but it's a different animal when you step in there and you're facing live pitching that is major league caliber. Like, these guys are disgusting with their pitches. It's just like impossible to hit. I don't know how anyone hits at all. And so I would not read into it at all. He struck out only 20% of the time in Double-A, 24% of the time in High A, 26.6% of the time in Low A, and then in AAA in just 8 games, he struck out 31.4% of the time. And that was a little high, but when you're 19 and you're in AAA, like, we'll forgive you for striking out 31% of the time. So the projections across the board have him in the high 20s or low 30s, like 30.5. So to have that projection as a 20-year-old is actually completely fine with me. And you would expect as he gets older, you improve. Most people who are 20 are not at this level yet. That's the deal. And so anyway, the Giants sent him out of Major League Camp, and not because he was struggling. That's another thing, is he wasn't getting consistent plate appearances. And so that you need those to get your timing down. And he just wasn't getting it. And so they sent him out. They reassigned him to minor league camp, which is no big deal and to be expected. He wasn't going to make the team out of spring training. He's played a grand total of 17 games above A ball. And so, yeah, he needs to work on his defense and give him some upper minors experience, and if he dominates, we'll see him. But they sent him out to get those consistent at-bats in minor league camp, and the strikeouts will probably come way down the more he plays there. So, yeah, don't worry about it. It's 12 plate appearances. Anyway, next question comes from Joe, who says, have we heard anything about Carson Whisenhunt this spring? Any suspicion they didn't sign a lefty for the bullpen because he's the plan? That's my guess. Can still start down the road, AK or SKA. I don't know if you mean AKA or like a la Crochet and Hicks, Garrett Crochet, Jordan Hicks. So Carson Whisenhunt was sent out this morning. So you asked the question before this happened, but he's not going to start the season with the major league team unless there's like a huge number of injuries that occur. He was reassigned to minor league camp, and we have heard about him this spring. I don't know how much he's pitched, if at all. Like, I don't recall seeing. Yeah, he pitched in 3 innings, 2 games, no starts, 3 innings pitched. Didn't allow any runs, didn't walk anybody, didn't allow any homers, obviously, if he didn't allow any runs. Ground ball rate was 87%, but again, it's 3 innings. So same deal. They want him to, well, it's a little bit different because he's not 19 or 20, he's 24, and he did spend a long time in AAA last season. And so I guess it's somewhat more surprising that he was already reassigned to minor league camp, but probably the idea being they want him to continue to be a starter, and it's not that there's not room. There is like some sort of competition, but he's not on the 40-man roster. And so they've got other guys like Hayden Birdsong, Landon Roop, Kyle Harrison, Tristan Beck, who are on the 40-man roster and are more so in that competition for who's going to be the 5th starter. I think like Landon Roop is definitely a candidate. Hayden Birdsong, definitely a candidate. And Kyle Harrison, definitely a candidate. And so if you've got all those guys and you've got Carson Whisenhunt, makes sense to let him get stretched out when they're only 3 weeks away from the season. So they have to start using their starters and stretching them out, and you can't afford to do this to do that with a player who's not going to break camp with you and be a starter, because they're just taking up too many innings when you need those to go to the guys who are going to break camp with you. So that's the answer there. But still, I think we'll see Whisenhunt very possibly this year, and very possibly Bryce Eldridge too. But so them getting reassigned out of Major League camp doesn't really mean much, but I guess your question was answered. I would have answered like maybe if he hadn't been reassigned, but the fact that he was reassigned, it answered the question for us. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast with hosts Dominic Martino and Matthew Onay. MLB fantasy draft season is here. Be the most informed fan and set yourself up for a league win. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a ton, so thanks in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. We'll be talking with Millard from Locked On D-Backs. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.